The next morning came with a suffocating silence, the kind that pressed heavily against the walls as if even the air remembered something terrible. Jungkook lay on his bed, his body tense beneath the sheets, his fingers clutching the fabric so tightly that his knuckles had turned pale. His breathing was uneven, ragged, broken, as if each breath fought against something invisible, choking him from within. Sweat drenched his forehead, trickling down the sides of his face, soaking into the pillow beneath him. No, don't touch her, he muttered in his sleep, his voice hoarse and strained, barely audible. Yet filled with raw desperation, his brows furrowed, furrowing deeply as his head moved restlessly against the pillow. His grip on the sheets tightened further, his chest rising and falling rapidly. Leave her, I said leave her. He almost shouted this time, his voice cracking, his body jerking slightly as if trying to fight something he couldn't see, his legs shifting under the blanket as though he were trying to run but couldn't move. The nightmare consumed him entirely. The screams, the helplessness, the blood. No. Jungkook suddenly shot up, his body snapping upright, his chest heaving violently as he gasped for air, his eyes wide open yet unfocused, as if he was still trapped between the nightmare and reality. He dragged in a sharp breath, his hand immediately going to his chest as if to steady his racing heart, his other hand still gripping the crumbled bed sheet tightly before slowly loosening its hold. Outside his door, a hurried knock echoed. Jungkook? Jungkook opened the door. Lisa's voice came, placed with worry, her knuckles hitting the wood repeatedly as she stood outside, her brows knitted together, her lips pressed into a thin line. Jungkook closed his eyes for a brief second, his breathing still heavy, his jaw tightening as he tried to compose himself. It had been 9 years, and yet the nightmare never left. Another knock. Jungkook, please, say something. Lisa called again, her voice softer this time, but filled with concern, her hand resting flat against the door as if trying to feel his presence through it. Jungkook inhaled deeply, forcing his breathing to slow down, his shoulder rising and falling as he dragged himself back to reality. Without saying anything, he swung his legs off the bed, his movements mechanical, detached, as if he had done this a thousand times before. He walked towards the door, his steps steady but heavy, his face already settling into that cold, unreadable expression he always wore like armor. He opened the door. Before he could say anything, Lisa stepped forward and cupped his cheeks with both her hands, her eyes scanning his face anxiously. You had another nightmare, didn't you? She asked softly, her thumbs brushing lightly against his skin, her gaze searching for any crack in his composure. Jungkook's eyes flickered for a split second, but he immediately looked away, his jaw clenching as he gently but firmly grabbed her wrist and pulled her hands away from his face. I'm fine, he said flatly, his voice devoid of emotion, his grip loosening as he let her hands drop, stepping back into the room without waiting for her response. Lisa stood there for a moment, her hands still slightly raised in the air before slowly lowering them, her lips parting as if she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Instead, she followed him inside quietly, closing the door behind her. You were shouting, she said after a pause, her voice careful, her eyes fixed on his back as he walked towards the closet, his posture rigid and distant. Jungkook didn't turn around. It was nothing, he replied coldly, opening the closet and grabbing a towel, his movements precise and controlled, as if he was deliberately avoiding the conversation. Lisa frowned slightly, crossing her arms as she leaned against the wall. It's never nothing with you, Jungkook, she said, her tone firm but not aggressive. Her gaze unwavering as she watched him pick out his clothes. Jungkook pulled out a shirt and a pair of black pants. His expression unchanged. Then stop asking, he said coldly, his voice low and sharp, his fingers tightening around the fabric for a brief second before relaxing again. Lisa let out a quiet sigh, shaking her head slightly. You think shutting everyone out is going to fix it? She asked, pushing herself off the wall and taking a few steps towards him. Her brows furrowed with frustration and concern. Jungkook finally turned slightly, just enough to glance at her from the corner of his eye. There's nothing to fix, he said, his tone indifferent, his gaze hard and distant, before he looked away again. That's not true, Lisa insisted, her voice rising just a little, her hands clutching into fists at her sides. You still see it, don't you? Every night. I don't know what's the nightmare about, but you are still. Enough. Jungkook cut her off sharply, his voice suddenly colder, heavier, as he turned fully this time, his eyes dark and piercing, making her words stop mid-sentence. The room fell silent. Lisa swallowed, her gaze softening but her worry only deepening. I'm just trying to help, she said quietly, her shoulders dropping slightly, her voice now gentler. Jungkook stared at her for a moment, his expression unreadable, before turning away again, clearly done with the conversation. I don't need it, he muttered, grabbing his toothbrush from the shelf and tucking it along with the towel over his shoulder. Lisa watched him, her eyes lingering on his back, knowing very well that he was lying, not to her, but to himself. She exhaled slowly, running a hand through her hair. Fine, she said after a moment, her voice tired but calm. Go freshen up. Breakfast's ready, she added, turning towards the door, her hand resting on the handle for a second before she paused. She looked back at him one last time, and Jungkook, she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. You don't always have to pretend. Jungkook didn't respond. He didn't even look at her. He just stood there, his back facing her, his expression hidden, but his grip on the towel tightening ever so slightly. Lisa sighed again, realizing she wasn't going to get anything out of him. She opened the door and stepped out, closing it gently behind her. The moment she left, the room felt colder, quieter. Jungkook stood still for a few seconds, his shoulders stiff, his jaw clenched as he stared blankly at the wall in front of him. Then, without another thought, he walked into the bathroom and shut the door behind him, locking everything, his emotions, his memories, and the nightmare, right back where they belonged.